Aviation fans, welcome back to another episode of Imperial Diecast. And today we're going to be taking a look at a very cool livery on an equally cool plane from the past, a Lockheed L-1011 Tristar. So here's the box of the plane, and you can see this is a 1/500 scale Herpa. And it comes with the registration. You've got the Delta Airlines logo here at the top. And if we take a look at the side, we just have another image of the plane. And at the back, we have, of course, got the dimensions of the plane, like a wingspan of 50.09 meters, a length of 50.06 meters, and a height of 16.87 meters. Now this is Herpa catalog number 504898. So let's get unboxing. I paid €14.50 for this plane from mw-moba.de, which is a normal price for an old generation widebody. But considering this is the Delta Tristar, it's a good deal. Here's the plane inside the box. And here it is. Herpa's OG Delta Airlines Lockheed Tristar. And here she is in the truly iconic old-school Delta Airlines livery that was known as the widget livery, which they had from 1962 all the way up to 1997, so 35 years, which is a very long time in aviation history. And I can't blame them, because it's a good-looking livery. Why fix something that ain't broke, right? Another fun fact about the L-1011 is that Delta Airlines flew the largest amount of Tristars, and at one point they had 70 Tristars in their fleet. And even though this was, together with the DC-10, the workhorse of the 70s, it continued flying throughout the 80s and even the 90s, with the last Delta L-1011 retiring in 2001, a year that in more ways than one marked the end of a golden era of America and birthed sort of the world we live in today. Anyhow, we'll start off as usual by taking a look at the L1 door at the port side of the aircraft. And you can see that Herpa did a fairly good job here because we have the Delta titles written in the slightly curved lettering, just like the slanted Delta widget in front of the L1 door. Then, if you look at the windows, they are painted in gray. We have the L2 door over here, and then we have the L3 door right there at the back. Now, this is the L-1011-500, which is the shortened fuselage version of the L-1011-1. And the easiest way you can spot an L-1011-500 is by the 3 doors. By comparison, this plane's rival, the DC-1030, has 4 doors, as you can see in this picture. However, the L-1011-500 only has 3 due to the shortened fuselage. Now here at the back of the plane you can see the registration, which says November 759 Delta Alpha. And right here we have the gorgeous tail assembly, which is probably one of the most beautiful trijet assemblies out there. You can see that on the number 2 engine it actually says Tristar as a little bit of extra detailing. We of course have the Delta widget on the vertical stabilizer, the American flag, and the 3 middle digits of the registration, 759. As we take a look at the horizontal stabilizers, you can see that they have some extra bit of detail in the form of this gray paint. However, there are no detailings for the elevators. And now taking a look at the wings, they have a basic level of detail on them. You have some extra gray paint to give them a little extra feature. And then we have the flaps, the slats, the air brakes, ailerons, everything carved very nicely, and there is no extra paint on them, so they are pretty sharp, I'd say. Now, Herpa re-released this Delta L-1011-500 as a new generation model in 2012 under the catalog number 519212, and in this picture you can see what it looked like. It had scale-accurate landing gear, silver frames for the cockpit windows and all passenger windows. The engine intakes had been darkened. There was no vertical mold line in front of the wing, and there was also that deltoid-shaped panel where the horizontal stabilizers meet the fuselage, which was missing on this old generation one. But the new generation model is so much harder to find compared to this OG, and if you do, it'll be a lot more expensive. So I'm happy with mine. There are a couple of other manufacturers who have made the L-1011 Tristar in 1/500 scale in the Delta widget livery, namely Postage Stamp and Schuko Starjets, who I think only had an extremely limited release of like just 20 models. But to tell you the truth, I'm really happy with the Herpa casting, because both the Starjets and Postage Stamp castings had problems getting this entire tail assembly to look like the real thing. The Starjets decided to make the vertical stabilizer and number 2 engine a separate piece, and then mounted it on the fuselage, so you have a separation line running across this section here. And the Postage Stamp for some reason had the front part of the number 2 engine as a separate piece, so you have a mold line running here right in front of the Tristar logo. But Herpa has really managed to cast both the fuselage and the vertical stabilizer and the number 2 engine as one piece, so they seamlessly blend into one another. No separating mold lines anywhere, so hats off to them in that regard. Another difference to the old Herpa and the new generation Herpa is that on the new generation, every single window has a silver frame, which is also the case on the Starjets and the Darren Postage Stamp versions, so that's definitely a downside of this old Herpa model. Just like the missing cargo doors and the clunky old school landing gear. However, try finding a new generation Herpa version of this model, because it's really hard. I mean, you can still get the Darren Postage Stamp one, but the other ones are getting pretty rare. And here's a look at the Lockheed L-1011's underwing engines. They're Rolls-Royce RB211s. You've got the Delta widget on the cowlings. They have silver leading edges And inside you will find the fan blades have been nicely carved as well. And over there you can see the engine number 1, and this being a trijet, it has a third engine on the tail fin. The number 2 engine has no fan blades, and this is not because Herpa decided to cheap out, but because there is no engine up there on the L-1011 in real life. Instead, the engine is located inside here, and this is simply an air tunnel, an S-duct that feeds air to the engine inside here. Surprisingly, the Darren postage stamp plane actually modeled fan blades onto the number 2 engine, which is mind-boggling. Clearly the company in charge got this confused with the McDonnell Douglas DC-10's number 2 engine. Also, in terms of detail level, not only do you have the Delta widget on the number 1 and number 3 engines, but it even says Delta below it in incredibly small lettering, which is super easy to miss. That's the kind of detail I learned to appreciate on 20-year-old budget 1/500 scale Herpa planes. And here's a look at the front of the aircraft, and you can see that the front of the aircraft has the black radome, which is very iconic for the old Delta livery. And the cockpit windows don't have any frames, unfortunately, because this is an old Herpa. And that would have been nice if they had added that extra bit of detail. But otherwise, it is still a good-looking front end for this model, I think. And now taking a look at the bottom of the plane, you can see that there is the usual Herpa branding right there in the middle. Here you get another good look at the slats and the trailing edge fairings. And of course this is the landing gear, but then here at the back end you can see that it actually says copyright 1999 Delta Airlines, which is something that you usually won't find on Herpa planes, but I think Delta insisted on that extra copyright logo. Now here's a comparison to another L-1011 Tristar in the Caledonian livery, which was actually the plane that got me into collecting die-cast planes from the end of last year onward. But you can see that it is larger than this 1/500 L-1011-500, and that's not because the Caledonian is the longer fuselage L-1011-1, but also because it's slightly off scale. It's too big for 1/500. It's more like 1/460 scale. Very odd. So, I hope you enjoyed my review of this legendary plane from the 1970s and 1980s. I hope it brings back old memories for those of you watching, and for those of you too young to have flown in one of these, I think you'll appreciate what kind of cool planes your parents had the opportunity to fly in when they were your age. If you're interested in more plane reviews, please make sure to check out some of my other reviews over here. And as always, take care, have a wonderful day, and this is Imperial Diecast, signing out.